Right, how you all doing? I'd like to preface this with a little story and not so, maybe a cautionary tale, not so much, okay? Before anything though, resolution and quality are not the same thing. Excellent. A couple of days ago, maybe a week ago, I got told that an acquaintance of mine, a friend of mine, has just taken his first leap into PC gaming. Wow. First step into PC gaming. He's predominantly been a console gamer his entire life. But since the pre-orders on the Steam Deck have recently gone in the bin, he has decided that, well, he's going to finally give the PC a crack. And that got my mind a-whirring. Because not only is he now taking his first steps into PC gaming, he's going to be taking his first steps into Linux. His first PC will be a Linux PC, and this will be a perfect test to see if Linux is ready for the mainstream. Which, frankly, let's be fair, the Steam Deck has proven, yeah, it is. But if a complete novice to using PC, someone who predominantly uses consoles for gaming and phones and stuff for the internet, if someone like that can get hold of one of these and play some games as he desires, and perhaps hook it up to a telly, surf the web and all that kind of stuff, get what he wants out of it, fantastic. But I got to thinking, he can use this to finally join in on one of our podcasts. I take part in Rand Nerds podcast, and for years and years and years, since COVID really, when everyone went into lockdown, we lost a couple of hosts. And he was one of the hosts, and if he couldn't get round here, he didn't take part in the podcast. When we were in lockdown, he couldn't come round, right? Now he's got a PC, he can access Discord, we can get him a cheap microphone, we can get him a cheap web camera, and he could use this to record his audio and send it into me, and I can do the magic jiggery pokery, and bam, he's back in the podcast kind of thing. But one of my things that I really like to do is budget streaming. I thought to myself, he could actually get into live streaming now. Not just because of the Steam Deck, but like, you can use this as a streaming PC. Hook up a capture card, hook up a microphone and a dock and all that kind of stuff, and you can stream off this. 864p off of the processor, you can do it. But I was like, why don't I see if I can build the cheapest possible stream rig I can with parts I have laying about the house. And I think I've got something together for about 150 quid, give or take, which I'd say is pretty good, and that's where the whole resolution and quality aren't the same thing. I'm going to use him as an example again, and I do this a lot. League of Legends Tyler 1, LOL Tyler 1 on Twitch. He's one of the biggest Twitch streamers out there, and the dude is using a janky-ass webcam. He's usually lit by the glow of his screen, and is using a 40 quid gaming headset. The bit that people come back for is the guy in the stream. It doesn't matter if you've got thousands and thousands of pounds worth of equipment. If you're just sitting there going, and you've got no mic presence, no presence in front of a camera, no one is going to watch you. It doesn't matter what resolution you're streaming at, what bit rate you're streaming at, what capture card you got, what microphone you got, cameras, you know. It doesn't matter if you've got a £150 setup like I'm showing you now, or several £1,000 setup. If you haven't got presence, you're not going to get there. And if you have invested all that money and you expect to hit the live button and end up with 100 viewers concurrent straight away, you are going to be horribly, horribly disappointed. And I imagine a lot of your equipment is going to end up in the land of broken dreams. It's what my friends and I call eBay. That's where you can get all the bargains where people have bought things because they think something's going to be easy and or that gear's going to save them, and it just doesn't. So, if you want to see what streaming is like, to cut your teeth on it, like, are you going to be able to handle screaming into the void, talking to yourself for days, weeks, months, before you actually kind of gain any traction. Are you able to do that? This might be the best groove for you. And just so the thing is, right, this is the capture card I would normally use. One of the capture cards I would normally use. I've got boxes of capture cards because I've been doing this for years, but this is an Elgato HD60X. This costs between £175 and £200. This entire stream rig, whilst not perfect, costs less than this capture card. This capture card will do, you know, higher resolutions, higher frame rates, will pass through HDR and all that kind of stuff. But that isn't necessarily what is important in a live stream. You are the person streaming, the streamer. Same with YouTube videos. If the information in your video is sufficient, if it is useful to someone, the resolution of your video, the lighting and all that kind of stuff isn't going to matter. As an example, you probably wouldn't realise this, but I'm filming this on a £2,000 camera. It doesn't look like a £2,000 camera because I haven't done any of the other work to get the best out of the £2,000 camera. My stream rig, my main stream rig, is usually either a near £2,000 laptop with a £200 capture card attached to it and a £300 microphone or so, or it could be my £2,000 gaming PC with, again, microphones that are several £100, mixing boards that are several £100. I'm saying, if I was given the option between no stream at all or my £150 rig that I've got here, I'd take the £150 rig. It is good enough. It's good enough to cut your teeth on. It is good enough to teach you the basics, and it'll also give you a kind of a bit of an education in troubleshooting, because it's I'm not going to lie, it's not perfect. You do often get what you pay for, but for a full setup that costs less than this card, you're winning. This is not including consoles. Just throwing that out there, I'm not going to include consoles and cabling. I'm going to assume you already have like a PlayStation or an Xbox or a Switch or something like that. In fact, a Switch is probably the best console for this setup because the Switch is lower resolution, lower frame rate. This is the kind of setup that will give you an education on that kind of stuff. But there is no point streaming at 1080 60p or higher if the game you are playing is only rendering at 480p, for example, at standard definition. Or in a case of some of the stuff I've been doing today, my Steam Deck by default outputs at 720p. Games are rendered in a 720p window on the screen. Doesn't matter if you're hooked up to a 4K display or a 1080p display, this thing outputs at 720p. So streaming at 1080p when you're hooked up to one of these is a waste of bandwidth and resolution. Okay? I'm going to assume you've got your consoles, Steam Deck, Switch, PlayStation or whatever. If you've got a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series, I'm not going to lie, this setup is going to be completely lost on you because that's where you have higher resolutions, higher frame rates, HDR, that kind of stuff. Using this kind of setup will knock down some of those features. But, again, to cut your teeth, this could very well do the job for you. The basis of it, at least in the rig that I have here, is an ex-business Lenovo X230. You can get these for between £80 and £100. Well, you could get these for between £80 and £100. You can now buy something 2 models newer or significantly more powerful, 3 processor generations newer than this for about the same price I paid. So you can get an X250 or you can buy like a little Dell small form factor PC for about £100, around the same as what I paid for this. This model will stream 720/60, 864p. If you go with something with like a 6th gen processor in it, like a Core i5 6000 series, like I've got a little Dell DVD case size machine, that will happily do 1080/60 with cameras and overlays and all that kind of stuff. But this 720/60 864p, it will do the job. Doesn't cost a lot. It's a nice base for your stream. Next up is your capture card. Now there are loads of different versions of these, but generally just type in UVC HDMI capture card into like Amazon and you'll come up with stacks of different things. These are generally USB 2 and will run up to 1080/30. You can get some that do 1080/60, but most of the time they're a bit flaky. 720/60 though is guaranteed on most of these. You can get one for about let's say between £5 and £15. You will need to get an HDMI splitter though, because if you've got one just like this is only HDMI in. There is no way to feed this to your TV set without a splitter. So that's where something like this comes in. This is just a cheap and nasty little £15 HDMI splitter. 1 in, 2 out, job done. Feed from your console goes to the input, 1 output goes to your telly, 1 output goes to your capture card. Bickety bam, you're sorted. You could increase how much you're willing to pay on the capture card and get something with an input and an output if you really wanted to. For sound cards, I've picked a Creative Sound Blaster, is it Play 4? I think that's the one, or you could get a G3. They're about £25. This is one of the areas that you've got wiggle room on as well. You could go, oh I don't know, like a little £5 Sabrent dealio, or if you really wanted to, you could get one of those, are they called Fi-Fines? You can buy a USB condenser microphone from that company on Amazon for about 35 quid. And they are pretty good as long as you're willing to fiddle with them a bit. As long as you can learn how to use a microphone, you're pretty sound on that one. Or you can buy a Behringer audio interface like the UMC22 or the 202 or 204 HD and then grab yourself a Behringer Ultra Voice microphone for about $15. Put them together and you will have fantastic audio, no problem. Again though, you will have to learn mic presence and setup and that kind of stuff, but you will be good to go. However, a small USB sound card will do the job to get you started. No point investing in big boy expensive stuff if you don't know if you're even going to like live streaming. For a microphone, I've gone mega budget to 25 quid, SteelSeries Tusks, but as I say, you could get, there's loads of wiggle room on this kind of stuff. You could buy a cheapy set of Turtle Beach, whatevers. You could buy yourself, as I say, like the Fi-Fine condenser or a little USB condenser or dynamic, a full bore soundboard, whatever, for relatively little money. The Behringer stuff is only about 30 quid. So for, I think this was 25, the sound card I got here was 25. For around about the same cost, you could get yourself a little USB condenser mic or the UMC22 and a dynamic microphone, which would realistically sound a lot better than these, but given that this is a pair of IEMs with a boom mic on them, mic presence isn't going to be so much of a problem. Quality isn't going to be as high, but you know, job done. Right, so what have we covered there? Computer to stream with, capture card, splitter, sound card, microphone. Most laptops have webcams built in. You can buy a cheap webcam if you really want to. Not really necessary. You could flex and put a bit more cash into that, like 50 quid, and get something reasonably good. But don't worry so much again about resolution or frame rate, because you're just going to be a little bit on the side of a screen or whatever. I don't know. Logitech do a whole bunch of different web cameras. Job done. But all put together, you're talking about 150 quid. 150 quid for 720p or 864p, or depending on what machine you buy, you could go all the way up to 1080p. But again, as I say, the capture card is going to be a limitation. I would say that the capture card is probably the worst part of this entire setup, if I had to be honest. It's low resolution, low frame rate, and the compression that it uses isn't ideal. I'm not going to explain what really any of that is. However, I will say that, believe it or not, it takes more horsepower to use this, because it's using motion JPEG, so it has to be decoded and re-encoded, versus what I find using the Elgato HD60X, which will give me higher resolution, higher frame rates, but will also squirt a less compressed image down than this, so the machine has to do less work to encode. Also, sadly, this thing is dual mono audio. That is probably the worst part about this. If you're playing a game with some really rad audio, with like a really good soundscape, you know, where you can pan around and all the audio changes in all the different directions and things, again, really simplifying here, this is going to seriously spank the audio experience. Something like this, not so much, but again, you kind of get what you pay for. As a taster, this is going to do the job. Common faults you might have on a budget setup, some of those capture cards have really weird audio sample rates. Stuff like this in particular will require you to select a different sound device when you set it up to get it to capture sound. It's not that the sound card is broken, it's just that people aren't setting it up correctly. Stuff like this will capture directly. You just go video capture device, pick the device, and it will automatically capture sound. This, you have to go video capture device, pick the device, and then go right down to the bottom and tell it to capture from a different audio source. It has its own audio source that will be listed in as a separate microphone. Pick that and you'll get audio come out of it. Again, it's dual mono, not ideal, and it will probably also use a really, really weird sample rate in Windows. If you get sample rate mismatches, so your default audio, for example, might be 48 kilohertz, this might be running at 96 kilohertz. If there is a mismatch between OBS and your default audio out and this, you may find crackling or popping or dropping off on either your microphone or this. Simple solution, either match it up if you can. So if this is running at 96, run everything else at 96. If everything's running at 48, run it at 48. If you can't do that, disable the video preview, re-enable it, do the same thing for the audio, or, honestly, as silly as this sounds, unplug it and replug it. Even when you're live, just go off, back in, job done, your audio should be good. Less likely to have that kind of problem with this, but then this costs significantly more than the entire setup I've just listed. In fact, just the HDMI cables that I would normally use on my setup cost around about a third of the entire stream rig that I've just listed out. I've used this rig a couple of times today. I have had sample rate mismatches. Thankfully, people have told me. I fixed them. And frankly, the streams have looked fine. Plenty passable. The gameplay has been fun. I've enjoyed myself, and I have talked to many people. We've actually had people come in and view, not just my usual people, and it's been a good laugh. If you want to cut your teeth, do it on something mega budget first, so you can get used to all the kind of aches and pains, talk to thin air for a while, then move up to something a bit more expensive. I don't see the point in people spending hundreds of thousands of pounds and then going, I want to have a big audience, and then wondering why they don't get it. Having a £500,000 microphone isn't going to guarantee that you get a good audience or a big audience. Having a several £1,000 camera isn't going to mean that you're going to get an audience. I mean, I'm looking at my main rig now, £2,000 for the PC, £2,000 for the camera, with all the audio gear and lighting, you're probably talking another £1,000 on top. But could I get the same audience? Could I build the exact same audience on a 150 quid rig? Yes! Yeah, I could. Would I have to troubleshoot that rig a little bit more? Yeah, probably, but it's a learning experience. It's all the fun. So yeah, that's not how I wanted that to go. And I've made this video a lot longer than it needed to be. But quality is more about you than it is resolution, frame rates. I guarantee you, for most people I know, frame rate trumps resolution every day. If you can offer someone 1080-30 or 720-60, they'll take 720-60. If you can offer them 1080-60 or 4K-30, they'll take 1080-60. So, you know, it's not always about resolution. It's not always about the best microphone. Even if you've got the best microphone, you might not have the mic presence to carry it off. So sometimes having more expensive gear can be a bit of a handicap because you are becoming reliant on that gear to do a job. Most of the stuff I do at this point, like here, I am sat, as I said, in front of a several £1,000 camera. This is mostly audio. I'm just talking. The resolution of the video matters not. So the people who want the information will take the information from it. It's the quality of the content, not the resolution of the video. The quality, sarcastic air quotes, of the video that make the difference. But I don't know, I think I might go and do another budget stream. I ain't gonna lie. I'm not gonna keep using the cheap sound card. I always carry a couple in my bag just in case, because you never know if something like this fails. Then I've always got spares, and I have loads of these little capture cards. I recommend them to anyone starting out because they are so small, they are so cheap, and if it turns out you don't like playing or streaming, then you haven't really lost a lot. Whereas, as I say, the entire rig costs less than a capture card. And if you really wanted to, you could run the entire stream. You could use this as your streaming PC. So all I've been doing today is hooking the Steam Deck up to a cheap little dock, hooked up to this capture card, set to 720-60, 720-60 on the laptop, and just pushing it out and just having a laugh. Same with the microphone. I'm not using any big beefy microphones. I've just literally been using those SteelSeries Tusks. It sounded alright. People can understand what I'm saying. You can see what I'm playing. The frame rate was alright. The colour was alright. The resolution was alright. Was it as good as what you'd get out of something like this? No, but considering one capture card is like £10 to £15 and this is nearly 200, is the difference that big? No. And I should have probably also said this at the start. All of the really expensive gear is great if you are actually going to be able to fully utilise that setup. You know, a 4K camera largely goes to waste on Twitch or YouTube for streaming, because you have a much more limited range that you can use for that equipment. A studio grade microphone is never going to be used to its full potential whilst live streaming. If you were in a studio, would I recommend using these or the Tusks or a cheaper microphone? No. But we're not in a studio, we're on Twitch. There is a lower ceiling on places like Twitch and YouTube than there are in an audio studio or on a film set. So, you know, your mileage may vary. The point of diminishing returns comes in a lot sooner when you're just live streaming or making YouTube videos. So don't worry about quality, just have fun. Try it. If you like it, then think about investing. Like when you've got, I don't know, 20 or 30 viewers or something like that. When you've got some followers, then worry about maybe I should get a different capture card because I'd like to be able to play my PlayStation 5 in HDR or something like that whilst you're streaming. That kind of stuff. But I'm now going to head off. Maybe stream. Go to bed. Yeah, all of this because my mate has just got into PC gaming and I thought it was going to be neat that he would finally be able to sit on you know, Discord or hook up a webcam and we could all realistically get into chats and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to go big just to live stream and make YouTube videos. So, hope you're well. I'll see you all with a bit of luck in the next one. YouTube was built on a lot more basic gear than what we have now. When I started, it was all 480p, shitty camcorders and web cameras. Not everyone had several £1,000s worth of equipment to get started, so they didn't. You don't need it. Just have fun.